Well, good morning, everyone. This is John Craig. I got to remember to bring myself in there on the show today. I'm so glad that y'all are with us. We had quite a time in the war room this morning. A lot of requests going on. We're a little bit late, so I appreciate your patience in joining us on Let Us Reason Together on the second day of the week. And it's based off of Isaiah 118. Come now, let us reason together, says Yahweh. Though your sins are as scarlet, they'll be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they will be like wool. And this is where we sit down and reason out current events, cultural shifts, and of course, this week's Torah portion. We can either push back or push through. Nevertheless, if iron does not sharpen iron, sparks will never fly, and let alone ever get a fire going. So we're going to have a little heat, a little good midrash. And with all of that, it's so that our hearts will be soft and moldable enough to be transformed in the way that the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, wants us to be, and maybe have a little fun along the way. It is, I didn't change the date. It is February the 3rd in the year 2020, and which makes it the 8th day of the 11th month of Shevat in the Hebrew year 5780. So with that said, I'm going to jump right into the program, and but I'd like to bring Mark in this morning, and who also goes by Cram, and if you want to know, you want to check out his special show, the Compass of Cram, on Wednesday mornings at the same time slot. Good morning, Cram.
Oh, John, I'm almost there. Okay, yeah, okay. I think. That's pretty good. That's okay. All right. Hey, wow.
Hey, all I can say is
rough. That transport was a little rough there.
I want to make sure you tell Scotty he did a good job.
Well, I'm glad he's not like Dr. McCoy, because Dr. McCoy can't stand the transporter.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. You like that?
I did.
I surprised you with that one. So
that's great.
That's good. Hey, you got a trim. What's up with the trim?
Well, in an effort to be more like John Craig, I am working really hard at it, and don't be surprised if this might be gone pretty soon too.
Well, your beard looks wonderful. It looks nice. Looks very nice.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, so are you ready to set your mind free today?
Sure.
All right. So we're going to continue with this theme on these weird and quirky shower thoughts. So I like them. So I just think it's worth talking about, kind of get the show going. And by the way, if you're watching the show for the first time, we're going to be talking about the Torah portion. We're going to be talking about the half Torah Brit Hadashah. We're going to be talking about some news things that are actually affecting us that you need to know. So stay tuned for that. But I want to get some things in here first and talk about some shower thoughts. And what are shower thoughts? Well, those are those weird thoughts and ideas that pop in your head while you're like taking a shower, taking a bath, driving down the road. Maybe my head, nobody wants to be in my head. I'm just going to say that. And so anyway, so I'm going to give you the first one. And it says this: it kind of makes sense that the target audience for fidget spinners lose interest in them so quickly.
I don't even know what that means.
Don't you know what a fidget spinner is? It's one of those
never even heard of it.
Those three thingies, and you spin it with your fingers.
They were invented by pre-millennials.
for millennials.
No,
for millennials, not for millennials. That would imply millennials could actually work them. A millennial sees as it's like, oh, it's a pre-drone. That's what millennials would probably call one of those spinners, is a pre-drone, because they look like a 3-pronged drone.
Well, they do. So what is it about if you find no interest in them to even use one. I don't know. I always see them out at the checkout lines like, yeah, I'm not wasting my money on that.
You mean they're actually still selling those?
I still see a few around. Yeah. It's because they're so overstocked they didn't sell.
Yeah, that's what I would probably say. Yeah.
Yeah. How about this one? The Olympics is the only time when you hear great execution by North Korea, and it seems okay.
United States kind of the same way.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. How about this one? This spring forward thing would be a lot more popular if we moved the clocks ahead at 2 p.m. on Monday. That's a good shower thought.
I think it should spring forward and never return.
That's right. No fallback, just stay forward. There you go.
Yeah.
How about this one? The object of golf is to play the least amount of golf.
I wouldn't know. Never played it. Don't play it. So.
Okay, Sandi, so that you can understand.
I know this one. I got this one.
Yeah. So you don't want the least amount of strokes.
You and Jonathan play golf all the time. You already have in the past.
So the least amount of strokes is good. So if you don't want to be chasing that ball into other fairways, that's for sure. Yeah. Okay. How about this one? Since there are 3,600 seconds in an hour, and most people make less than $36 an hour, their time is worth less than a penny per second. It's literally worth your time to pick up a penny from the ground.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And especially if somebody just didn't think that their pennies were worthwhile and just threw a big bag of pennies out on the sidewalk, then it wouldn't even be more worthwhile.
Well, I know where there's lots of pennies.
Oh, really? Yeah, you do.
I've seen a tiny house before that has lots of pennies.
Yeah, I challenge you to take them suckers off.
Yeah. How about this one? Watching a graduation ceremony is like sitting through a movie that's entirely end credits. It's my
end credits.
Yeah. So yeah, let me read that.
Credits.
Yeah. Watching a graduation ceremony is like sitting through a movie that's entirely end credits.
Oh, I see. I get it. Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good. I like it. That's
scrolling through all the names and stuff. Yeah.
Somebody
takes 2 hours.
Sat through a graduation ceremony and was bored and probably was watching a movie on their phone, on their iPhone, and came to the end credits and thought, oh, well, that's what this is like.
Yeah. It's like, man, all these names and what they did. All right. So there you go. How about the verse for the day? Verse of the day today is it's from the Brit Hadashah. It's from the Matthew 14:27. It says, but immediately Yeshua spoke to them saying, take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. I like that verse. Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid.
You're always, giving a precursor to the Brit Hadashah for the portion every week.
Oh, well, there you go.
Tickler.
It's a tickler. It's a little teaser.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So stay tuned for the Brit Hadashah portion.
Brought to you by
Cram, who hosts the Compass of Cram
and runs the network.
It runs the whole network too. Yeah.
I was thinking it was more like the cartoon before the movie is really what I was.
Oh. You know what? That's probably more apropos. I would say that fits better. The cartoon, the funny cartoon before the. Yeah.
He didn't get it. So.
No.
Well, I was thinking, why is a verse the funny cartoon before the movie?
No.
All right. That's right. It's slick sometimes up here on top. It's so slick because so many things just go by me.
That's what I was thinking too. So, but I wasn't going to say it. Thank you for saying it.
You don't have to be in agreement on me for everything.
It needed to be said. Thanks,
right. Oh, goodness. Well, how about some headlines from around the world? Seriously, these are headlines from around the world. This is from the La Crosse Tribune. So La Crosse, Wisconsin. I lived in La Crosse, Wisconsin at one point in my life. And so here, this headline reads, Wisconsin woman takes husband to police for talking stupidly. I think that would make the headline. Yeah. Someone reading through all the different police report things, figure out what they're going to put in as an article, and they see, woman arrived at the police department because he was talking stupidly today. Okay, how about this one? This is from the Mirror. Warehouse worker packing stress balls. You know the stress balls? Is
right? Demonstrate it.
Like those little widget things.
Yeah, like the widget things. Yeah. So warehouse worker packing stress balls punched his boss in the face. He said, "Don't touch the merchandise." No. Okay. How about this next one? These next four are actually from Timothy Haas and Bozeman in the Bozeman Daily Chronicle.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
The first one, I want to go. I can't get past that first one. There was that slipped in by Sandi to make sure that all of us husbands have a warning that the police are there for husbands that talk stupidly. I can't get past it. I just can't get past that one.
I had nothing to do with it.
All I can say is that
are we going to be truthful here? Or are we going to?
If Sandi did that, I would be a household name down at the city jail.
Oh, that's good. I like it.
Oh my goodness.
All right, now let's go on. All right, no more self-deprecation right here. All right.
That's not good.
Going on. Okay. So Timothy Haas, Bozeman Daily Chronicle gave us this headline. Typhoon rips through cemetery. Hundreds dead.
Cemetery.
Yeah. There you go. How about this next one from Timothy Haas? Juvenile courts to try shooting defendants.
There's commas missing out of that.
Juvenile court to try shooting defendants. I don't know what juvenile court.
Try shooting. See, that's why I say there's commas missing out of that sentence, that headline. That it makes it hard to, going back to the cemetery one. Sorry, it just takes me a little while.
Mark, they call that delayed intelligence, but that's okay.
I'm still kind of over there.
We can rewind.
It's called what is it? When you only hear what you want to hear, type of thing. So is it kind of like when you're driving down the freeway and your dad says, you pass a cemetery and your dad says, "Hey, there's people dying to get into that place."
That
kind of thing.
It's kind of like that. Yeah. All right. Okay, let's go on to this next one. This next one is miners refuse to work after death. Good for them.
Miners refuse to work. That's a headline. Can you read the story? I would like more on this one.
I would like more on that one too, but my source just gives me the headlines.
Oh, I see. Sandy's just not letting you have enough time to actually read the story on any of these.
Yeah, she's like,
would you like for me to give you the story?
Yes.
yeah.
What is the story, Mark?
Oh, well, next one.
All right.
Oh, come on.
All right. So this is my last headline for today, and it is Iraqi head seeks arms.
Okay, I get it.
And these, okay, this is, yeah, I get it.
I need arms today. I'm gonna get myself into
You
trouble.
are.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
You
we
need
can
to
get.
apologize to the world.
It's
Look,
it's
can
like it's like Mark's head. You know, when he makes his head, just make his head there.
Can
No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. All right.
Can I go ahead and run the disclaimer right now? If you don't,
Yes. If you want.
is that what you're looking for?
There we go. See, look, there we go.
It's wild looking. Okay, that is hilarious.
It's funny, right? So if you are just listening, you need to go back, rewind, and watch that part. So, are you Iraqi?
Yeah.
Oh, he's beaming out. He's beaming out now, John. You've done it.
All right. Okay, so talk about. Am I being rude today? I hope I'm not being rude. But here's 10 rude manners that are actually polite in other countries. So, do you think it's impolite to burp after a meal? And think again. What may be a no-no at an American dinner table
At a German table, it's accepted.
It's totally acceptable in other cultures. Yeah. And so burping and slurping at the dinner table is acceptable in China and Taiwan. In fact, it's the highest form of flattery. It means you like the food.
Right.
So
Burp,
Right.
slurp.
yeah, burp and slurp.
So you do remember what the German word for constipation is, right?
Remind us, Mark.
Far from pooping.
Just don't do that at the dinner table.
I figured you guys would remember that. I debuted that on this show in 1927.
Right.
1920s.
Yeah, you look good for your age. All right. How about this one? Arriving to dinner date is late. Or arriving to a dinner date late is actually rude in America, but at other countries, it's in India. It says it's totally acceptable to show up to dinner 15 or 30 minutes behind schedule. Why? They're a little more relaxed about time than we are.
Showing up to my dinner late is not acceptable, John.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Try showing up for a Passover late. That even worse.
Yeah, right. Okay. But it says in India, it says Indians value relationships with people over being punctual. So
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That does not compute.
It's not confused. Yeah. It's just that's the way it is. How about this? I'm going to give you this last one. Chugging a glass of wine. Chugging a glass of wine. In Georgia, that is the country Georgia, tradition calls for you to down your entire glass in one go after a toast. Thankfully, for your liver, the glasses tend to be on the small side. So I hope you don't do a lot of toast in Georgia.
You know, have you guys ever done a Passover where I teach it?
No.
I don't think you have you? At my Passover, and this is a fact, ask anybody who's been to any of the ones I've ever taught, is that when you pour the 4 glasses of wine, whenever you pour each and every one of them, you are not allowed to just take a drink. Whatever you pour in that glass goes down when you tilt your head back. And that's the way I say. So don't pour more wine in there or grape juice or whatever, because you have to empty that glass every time. And it's actually a Jewish tradition that I learned real early on in the early Passovers that I attended is that you don't want to leave that wine in the glass. It's just, well, it's kind of like all the other stuff. It's rude. It's not, the wine represents our life, and you don't leave it in the glass. You pour the whole thing down. So kind of the same thing.
I have to say, our Passovers, our Pesachs have a tendency to be between 70 and 140 people. So we usually do grape juice.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
Because that would be
that'd be a big deal.
Well, yeah.
Still, yeah, I mean, in a real Passover. No, I mean, I didn't mean that. It wasn't a real Passover.
Whatever.
In a personal real Passover.
Well, that reminded me of our game.
Huh?
Our game.
Which one?
When I said whatever.
Oh,
the crazy one. Quelf. Yeah.
Oh,
whatever.
I digress.
All right. Okay. Well, okay. That's all I'm going to torch you guys with today. And we've got more. We'll have more next week. So stay tuned. You never know what you're going to get here live on Let Us Reason Together, the Monday edition. And so we've got the Torah portion. And
I don't know that I'm ready for the Torah portion.
You're not ready for the Torah portion?
I'll do it, but I'm still not ready for it.
Sandi, you can teach a Torah portion or any subject. All you got to do is have that and just let it flow. You can do it.
Yes, you can.
Well, what I am going to talk about today concerns the Sea of Reeds, the Yom Suf, or the Red Sea, as some would know it, and the fire and the water, because fire and water are very prophetic. We've seen it throughout the word. At the very beginning, we see it in the journey through the Exodus, and we see it in Revelation. And so I just want to connect this fire water together, as we have before. We've talked about it, but on our show, at least Walking in Spirit and Truth, shameless plug. But you have this foreshadowing of what's going to happen at the end of time in Revelation 20, when Pharaoh, who represents basically Hasatan, he is thrown into this lake of fire. He's drowned in the Sea of Reeds. He's taken care of. And you say, well, that's a sea. Well, fire and water go hand in hand. I want you to think about the cloud and the pillar, even themselves. It's fire and water. It is Yeshua, of course. And out of Yeshua flows living water. Belly's living water. Out of your belly shall flow living water. But also remember that what is destructive to one, what means death to one, is life to another. Those who do not follow Yah, those who want to live life their own way, water and fire will destroy them. And we see that when in Exodus chapter 14, when we see Pharaoh and his armies, and some say Pharaoh lived, some sages say Pharaoh lived and returned. So whichever way it is, most of Egypt and its armies was destroyed, at least the military side, and possibly Pharaoh himself. But even in the very picture of the letters themselves, when you look at Mayim for water, or Shemayim, the heavens, fire water, is really what it looks like. You see even in the very spelling that there's something there, because that mem, when a mem, the letter mem is at the end of the word, it's called a mem sofit, and it is it represents judgment. And I find that very interesting. Now, in Mayim, there's two mems, which I don't necessarily want to get into all of the letters and things like that we do at Life of Worship, but the Yom Suf has only one, and when you look at that, you're looking at, and then you compare it to Daniel 7:9-10, which says, I kept looking until the thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took a seat. His vestures were like white snow, and the hair of his head was pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were a burning fire. All of the sudden, that takes you back to wheels. That takes you back to chariot wheels, maybe. And you think about the water flowing, the water of judgment flowing through the wheels, or the water of life flowing through the wheels, the water that's fire that will burn or drown, or the fire water that will cleanse, purify, and make whole. Because then you jump over to Revelation, and it says, then he showed me a river, the water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God of the Lamb. There the water brings life, but that same water will bring forth judgment. And I find it's just always fascinating to me to discuss water. Of course, we did a whole series of that on Walking in Spirit, and how fire and water play a part in so much of the word if we look a little bit more deeply. And the shin of the fire and the mayim of the water, that's that fire water. And it's the symbols of the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh as well, that fire, that water. In the end times, the Spirit's going to go out and judge the hearts of men. It doesn't matter how many Shabbats we've kept or how good we think we are. If it's not within our heart, the truth will be made known, and we will face the fire water of judgment instead of the fire waters of purification and salvation. For Israel was saved as they marched through the water. Israel was saved through the fire, the cloud, the fire that went before them, and the water that went before them. Israel is saved through the living water, Yeshua, our Messiah. But that same very water will bring death to those who truly don't live it out. And I can't say enough in this day and this hour, when we hear about things, diseases and judgments and all sorts of things that seem to be coming out and filling the world. It is judgment, but out of those judgments, we need not fear, because we will find salvation. For the righteous have found fire to be cool and living and moving among them. The judgments that we see come forth, they're not going to come forth and touch us. Psalm 91, pray Psalm 91 every day over yourself and every family member that you have, because those things are not going to affect us. They're going to affect those around us as they face the judgment of Yah. And this right here shows how the world, Egypt, is to be judged. And if we are partakers, if we have mixture, if we fall in more to that beast nature instead of into our nefesh, we're going to face judgment, and we're going to feel how uncomfortable it is to walk through the fire and water instead of the security of the salvation of both. And Egypt represents the nations. The nations are going to go through the fire. They're going to go, they have already gone through the water, but we're going to see that fire water manifest again. And Pharaoh represents the nations as well. And it also shows that even though the nations will pursue us in the end day, will pursue Israel to try to bring destruction, salvation is ours, because the destruction will fall to the rebellious, those that walk in the flesh, those that walk in Egypt. And so our joy should be to know that the fire in the water, the fire water, the Shemayim, will bring forth life to us, but it should bring caution to us to examine our lives as the pressures get greater and greater. Whom do we truly serve? Do we intimately know him, or do we know of him? Are the ways that we follow, the Torah that we follow, are they simply motions and gestures, or do they come from the very heart of how we live and how we breathe and how we move? Do they emanate from us because it's how much we love? And so then we follow his word and the pattern of his word, not out of rote, but out of relationship. So let the fire and the water, let the fire waters come, and our wheels shall not be removed. The chariot wheels will not fall off. We won't be drowned in the sea of reeds or the fire in the fire of hell, but we will live and come forth more beautiful and fulfilling the purpose for which we've called. So,
all right.
It's nothing new, revelational, just saying.
No, it made me think about a bunch of different things before I say anything. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you spend as many years in Oklahoma as I did, that word fire water turns into a whole different meaning. I've drank myself a lot of fire water, and so, but I digress. Sandy and I have done a lot of shows together, and she knows that I'm per se, I don't go to the spiritual end of things without covering the whole gamut, and not necessarily first. It's just I don't like to take it from the spirit, and I understand totally in what you're saying in the fire and the water and the cloud, all of that working has to work together. It can't be separate entities. For instance, like the cloud that goes before them, as and the fire going before them, and our first thought is to, as you're say you're new to Torah and you're reading this portion, and your first thought, as it seems like I remember mine to be 25 years ago, was that it was a fire by night to give them light, and a cloud by day to give them covering, and all of that, and there's an aspect to that, but it's not that way at all, when in fact it is a very spiritual thing in their covering and in their because that fire at night moved when they were to move, and there were times when they moved for a long period of time. And so logistically, I heard a teaching on this several years ago on this portion of how they actually traveled in pairs or in families, and when they would travel for days at a time, they would switch off, sleeping and moving their herds and their everything that they owned, all this type of thing. And so you can logistically, it was where my mind's always going to go. I want to know logistically, how did all this work? And if God is supplying all of their needs, then God has pre-thought this out, and or does he need to pre-think this out? And so as you're teaching on fire and water and fire, water, all of this, it's one of those things where it is God's provision 100-fold in so many different ways that we can't even fathom. And another thing that I thought about in realizing what God did with the cloud and the fire and all this is that I am sure that there are things God provided for them in this traveling that they did, that they didn't even know God was supplying. And it's the same way we need to take time to maybe not recognize that God is supplying even more than what we need or want or anything in our daily provision that we don't even know about. I mean, we may, once we get to heaven and we're sitting around on the cloud, because we're all going to go to heaven and we're going to sit around on a cloud and we're going to talk to Jesus about, all the different things that happen, I mean, because that's what's going to happen in the millennial kingdom, is we're going to sit around on a cloud. Come on, you guys are supposed to smile on that one. That was a funny. Is that we're going to find out that there's a lot of things today, every day, that God is supplying of our needs that we don't even know about. You know, it's in the background. It's just that, I mean, we're getting through this time and we complain and gripe about so menial things, when in fact there are big things that could have happened that didn't happen because God is supplying all of our needs. Of course, that comes from our devotion to the Lord and our commitment to, as they did. You know, I mean, they were committed to this thing. Yes, they complained and they griped, and God still supplied all of their needs. And it's the same thing today. We gripe and complain, but God in the background is still supplying so many of our needs. But it comes down to that commitment of ours to not switch over to taking care of everything that we have to take care of because we don't see God taking care of them. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that we should be mindful of even those little things that God is taking care of on a regular basis. Adina and I are watching this documentary on, and this is going to sound really weird, but we're watching a documentary on cheerleading. And it is you guys are Texas, do you know where Navarro College is? It's 50 miles outside of Dallas. You guys don't have a clue where it is. Well, Navarro College, 50 miles outside of Dallas, is has a cheerleading squad that it's a cheer athletics, and they go to competitions every year. And they've done a documentary on this one college and their cheer athletics. They call it cheerleading, but it's a much more to it. But one thing that stood out to me in this documentary that was said by the lady that is head over it all and teaches them all and what they do is they practice, and she says that she pushes them to do is practice until you get it right, and then keep doing it until you can't do it wrong. You get that?
Yeah.
And that is it, without even knowing it, that should be the goal. That should be what our lives should be every day, is practicing walking with God until we get it right and keep doing it until we can't do it wrong.
That's good.
That's good.
And to me, within that is not so much even our efforts, but it's what God's doing in the background that we don't even know about, that helps us to do this ourselves, so that we know that we're getting it right. You see what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with doing it wrong, I mean, because we should be learning from that. But you get what I'm saying. That's the fire water to me. That's what I get.
That's good. That's very interesting. I like that. I practice till you get it right, and then continue practicing till you can't get it wrong. That's worth remembering. That's a shower thought.
Okay, I think by now, John, we should have our showers down pretty good.
Sure.
And I don't know that I do anything wrong in the shower, so I think I got that right a long time ago. But yeah, that's good.
Well, it kind of made me think what Sandi was talking about as well, and it kind of goes with that fire water, because I think about the river that flows from the throne.
I didn't get there. That could have.
You could have gotten there with that.
I
Okay.
just didn't get there.
And that water that flows from the throne, and that it's crystal clear and all of that sort of stuff. And it's one thing that when you think about the flow of the river and Ezekiel's river, where the river continues to get deeper and deeper and deeper, that it is a process where you think the very kingdom of Yah, the everything that we know that comes from heaven, getting more and more abundant within our lives. And so I want to tie this to one of those articles that a lot of people say, well, that's kind of strange. And it's something that it's been in the back of my mind for years. But here, I'm going to give you the title of this weird article as we talk about this firewater. The Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl is a sign of the end times.
Oh, segues right into your news.
Well, I wasn't going to make this my news article today, but it is
Might
actually,
well.
It's very interesting. And this came from Relevant, I think is what it was. I'll have to pull it up. Relevantmagazine.com. And it says here that we live in strange times. Australia is on fire. The president of the United States is on trial. Russia is definitely up to something. Weird stuff to be sure, but it's a sign of the end times. As prophesied, or is it a sign of the end times as prophesied in Revelation? Probably not, is what the article says, but there is a potential new sign of the end times among us. The Kansas City Chiefs are bound for the Super Bowl. Now, this came out last week. Now, if you want to pay attention to what happened in the Super Bowl, Kansas City won the Super Bowl.
And they were behind 10 and a minute remaining in the third quarter because Jonathan let us know.
Yeah, we didn't watch the Super Bowl, but 1 minute left in the third quarter, and they were behind by 10. And they pulled it through.
And won by 11.
Won by 11. So they had a major, really big upsetting fourth quarter. And it says, but there's a potential new sign of the end times coming to us. The Kansas City Chiefs, I read that. That'll be that if they win, which they did, would be a sign for the coming revival that will sweep the world and herald the beginning of the end. That is, at least according to this viral Facebook post. So Sean Boltz is an author of several books on prophecy and host of TV shows on places like CBN and TBN. He wrote on Facebook that he heard someone else tell him that God had told him that the Chiefs would go to the Super Bowl and win it. He shared that when they won it, it would be a sign of the upcoming end time revival. So now, who is this person? It's the prophet. The person that was considered the prophet that said this was by the name of Bob Jones. It's not Bob Jones of Bob Jones University, but this is he was the leader of the Kansas City Prophets and a precursor of the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. And Jones prophesied a lot, and what he might charitably called an uneven track record. Jones, who passed away in 2014, said that the Archangel Gabriel visited him when he was 7 years old, blew a trumpet in his face, hurled a bull skin at young Bob's feet. That bull skin was the mantle of the seer prophets, which through God's power enabled him, just reading the article, enabled him to foretell earthquakes, tidal waves, comets, and weather patterns. Relevant could find no written record of Jones' prophecy about the Chiefs here. So those who want to hinge some end time significance on the outcome of the Super Bowl, whatever number it was, will have to take it on faith that Boltz is telling the truth here. Now, I'm going to just say this. I've heard the prophecy. I've heard it
for years.
Yeah, I've heard the prophecy for years. So kind of backing up what Boltz is saying. And the Chiefs going on.
Jonathan had heard the prophecy.
Yeah, Jonathan
before.
heard. Right, yeah. And it says, of course, the Bible is full of incredible prophecies, and God can ultimately do whatever he pleases, tell people whatever he chooses, but the Bible does caution about predicting the second coming. The book of Matthew says about that hour, day, or an hour no one knows, or even the day. Okay. The angels in heaven going on and says that. Understanding this is coming from a Christian perspective too. And then it says history of Christianity is rife with end time predictions that didn't exactly pan out. So kind of an interesting thing is that in the back of my mind for years, I'm not a follower. I don't follow football. I don't follow the Kansas City Chiefs. If there was any football team I followed, it was the Dallas Cowboys, of course. So just saying. And, but I just don't follow football. So, but I have paid attention the last couple of years. Kansas City did pretty well. And last year they got close to going to the Super Bowl. This year they did go to the Super Bowl. They did win. And talking about the river that's flowing from the throne, could this be a true prophecy? Is this something that we need to think about?
How is that the river flowing from the throne?
Well, when you think about the river, you think about revival. You think about awakening. You think about the river that's teeming with life, that river that brings life to the Dead Sea, that brings life to us. The awakening that so many people have talked about, is this maybe a sign of the awakening that we're living in extraordinary times? I mean, we're looking at this coronavirus. I've been talking about it here on this show and some other shows in the last couple of weeks. And there's some very interesting things about that that I could go into, but we could look at it as the pale horse, where it's included with the disease that's going to be part of wiping out a fourth of the population of the earth. We've got other types of world events that are going on that are just really, really significant. And then you have this little thing, this little zinger that's been talked about for years, about talking about this awakening. Now, I believe the end time awakening is twofold. Part of it is coming into the Hebraic roots of our faith. I think that is huge, where there's been such an influx of people since 2009 awakening to the Hebraic roots of our faith and understanding how the Torah is significant to everything, and where some people are just simply Brit Hadashah minded, New Testament minded. There's a lot there. But if we look at it as one part of it, I also believe that part of the end time awakening in people is truly the expression of the book of Acts in our time, where there is an anointing on the people, like there was an anointing on the people in the book of Acts, that we see miracle signs and wonders that were following, just like in this that we're talking about in the Torah portion. There were miracle signs and wonders, things that sustained the people significantly, that brought them deliverance out of Egypt.
Well, and woke them up because it said basically the last three plagues. Some say it was after the sixth that Pharaoh's education was done, and it was the people's. Anyway. Yeah, that's a whole nother midrash.
So think about this. Is this something that could be that the Father gave and said, when you see this happening, I just want to encourage you. It's a signpost that I'm really, Yeshua's coming. He's coming. And when things are looking so dark on the earth, then I'm going to give you a sign that I am in the midst of all of this. So don't give up. Don't lose hope. Stay encouraged. Things are happening. And so, we wait to see if there is this awakening that happens across the body of Messiah around the world, and where the kingdom expands and lives are changed and touched forever. Is this what we've been looking for? Is this sign is actually a fulfillment of those things that we know that are to take place when the glory of Yah covers the earth, and in the midst of when there's great darkness, according to Isaiah. And
so, John, are you teaching the Brit Hadashah today, or am I? Because you're teaching what I'm teaching on.
Well, you know what? We'll probably just have to segue right into that.
Oh, okay. Well,
because maybe it all ties together, and this is what we need to talk about.
It does. It just flows down from the river of God.
Well, doesn't that mean that the whole show just sort of went because went out of break, sort of?
Yeah. Well, take us to the Brit Hadashah.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just saying I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I couldn't have said it better.
Because, but there is and I love how how Yahweh will string these things together, and he'll tie all these elements together. But But there is but I believe we're living in an extraordinary time, and not to be disheartened. I want to give you just a testimony that happened the other day. I shared it on Shabbat with our congregation, and it was how I have felt so much pressure because of our circumstances. And the pressure is so much that even when I prayed, it overwhelmed my thoughts to where I couldn't just break through to worship. I couldn't just, you ever felt so overwhelmed by circumstances in life that when you pray, you can't get through that just to get a relief, to get your head above, what you say, get it above the water level, but get it above that second heaven where the powers, the principalities dwell. You just got to get beyond that to the throne room where you can just enter in, and then boom, it's just like awesome. Well, I've been feeling that. Father, I've got to hear that one word from you. I preach this. I talk about this. This one word from you will change your life forever. So I got to hear this word. And I woke up in the middle of the night.
So did you tell this when I was with the children?
Yes.
Okay. So I've never heard
this. You haven't heard this. This is for first time for Sandi to hear on the Messianic Lamb Network. And you're not getting it firsthand either. It's just like second. So I woke, but Yahweh woke me up. When I wake up, a lot of times that's when the Father speaks to me, is when I'm coming out of that dream state. Wow. And the Father will just deposit something in me. And I'm like, whoa. And all these things I've been dealing with, he just deposits something in me. I'm like, oh, I didn't ever think about that. Or, oh, that's exactly what I needed. Well, that was what I needed. And this was on Shabbat. And so I, and that word was simply this, was that I was not a failure. I was not a failure. Well, how does that really relate to it? Well, part of it is it's this circumstances that I'm under. As we're under, when I feel like that I can't provide, that I can't do anything else, that I'm limited in what then I cannot perform. And it's part of that Protestant work ethic. It's the man thing. If I don't supply, then I'm a failure. And that was really, really weighing heavily on me. And then the Father dropped that word, and he says, your circumstances don't define you. And that just, I know that I've taught that, but that's what he had to put in me and remind me of. And all of a sudden I could breathe. And the weight of everything needs to be, it's like, it's going to be okay. The Father's got this. He's got it taken care of. And what is this about? Is this thing that we need injected into our lives, hope that says, that in spite of the circumstances, in spite of all these different things going on in the world events, that he has made us for such a time as this, to be a light, to be encouragement, and not for us to even be weighed down by it, because he is our King. He has elevated us to where he's at. And we're not trying to claw out of miry clay, but he's pulled us out of miry clay. And anyway, there you go. There was just some thoughts that I had, and about
that relates to the river,
and it just relates to that river that flows, that
brings salvation,
it brings deliverance, it brings life, and
judgment,
and it's also fire, because it purifies our thoughts when it gets so cloudy and murky with circumstances, and it makes us, it makes us new. It's refreshing. So there you go. I guess we got a little bit of a news segment in there as well, but there you go. Pause and Selah. So, well, let's bring it around. Let's bring it into the Brit Hadashah. And Mark, what do you got for us today?
Let's bring it in. Let's rein it all in. That's what we need to do. Matthew 14:22 through 33. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We kind of know all this. Jesus walks on the water. Hey, you guys finished the I didn't take me back. Take me back. You guys finished the Messiah.
I did.
Series,
he has.
right?
I Honestly, I couldn't get into it. I just
You couldn't. Yeah, Adina, she watched it because I wanted to get through it because I knew you guys were too interesting. We'll talk about that. It's speaking of walking on water.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I did see that segment.
Interesting. So we'll talk about that. But this is. I want to read down to a certain point. It starts at 22. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side. Nobody catches the word. It's the translations that always get me on these because pay attention to your translations, people, because sometimes the translations just aren't right. Anyway, after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up in the mountain to pray by himself. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. In verse 25, it says, and in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. Now, interesting. These kind of things are what stands out to me probably more than anything else is the in the fourth watch or on the fourth watch. And so I thought I would talk about that today. And it's interesting that John was just talking about how it wakes up in the middle of the night and he's praying and everything. And there are entire articles written on the fourth watch, which is supposed to be between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock a.m. for a general understanding. There's a lot of, Sandi even said in her Torah discourse about in this day and hour, and she's literally not talking about the hour right now of our show or this day. It's more of the times that we're in. And it's interesting that fourth watch, as it's said here, is more an understanding of the end times. And so I have to tell you the honest to God truth, until today, until reading this discourse, I had not thought of this like this, of this passage here as being Yeshua. Well, I don't remember. Of course, I've been doing this for a long time, so there may have been a time. But it's interesting. He's saying that in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. And when they saw him walking, they were terrified, saying, it's a ghost. He says, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. And here we're talking in, let's just say it's the last days. Now, along with many of you that are out there, you've been a part of ministries. And let me preface this by saying I have absolutely nothing against end time ministries. I have been a part of a major end time ministry, and sometimes you get weary of that. Sometimes you embrace it with a full embrace. Sometimes you're very like, I need more proof of this. And as you live it over a period of time, the end times theories that come across and what's going to happen, it should have already happened. It's ahead of us. It's interesting. I heard Billy Graham say, well, I mean, in a teaching that I heard of Billy Graham's recently, where he had mentioned that the Bible is the only book that talks about the future in present tense. And it's interesting because that's exactly what it's doing here. It says, and in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them. And it's almost as though he is speaking of future tense. So I have nothing against it. I think maybe I have grown more weary of end time scenarios and look for a look for other applications to use in my life, in my personal understanding, and how I want to apply passages like this to my life. And I'm not, once again, I want to reiterate that I don't have anything wrong with it, but just in the same way that Sandi is talking about the passage of the way the people went through the fire and the water, and the way the Lord was presenting it to them. What John is talking about in this day and age, this hour, and our watch, what we should be watching for, and that he wakes up and it's the perfect time to pray. It's so interesting that just in the past few days, of course, it's living Torah is really what I'm talking about. These same things come to us, but they come to us on a personal level. And I think that's my take on this of Yeshua walking on the water here, is take it not so much as a future thing as for right now. It can be used by each one of us individually. That Yeshua is letting us know that just as the disciples saw him and were terrified and says it's a ghost, they cried out in fear. He's telling us, don't be afraid. The Lord is here for us, taking care of us, just like I was talking about earlier in response to Sandi's teaching, is that be aware that in this same way that Yeshua was walking on the water, there are things that the Lord is doing that we don't even recognize, or we're recognizing it as something else, when we should be discerning that the Lord is right there beside us. He's right there with us. He's in the background. And as Dr. Scotty would say, the angels are around us, taking care of us and going before us and all that type of thing. I just read somebody, I think Marilyn said yesterday she was missing Dr. Scotty or earlier today, and it reminded me of that. And so I think that's really where I take this is that I'm a little weary of end time scenarios and so much looking forward. What's going to happen is going to happen. All we're really called to do, as far as I'm concerned, is to save to get the lost a word to them that will help them also live a full life for God. And if we're spending so much time on end time scenarios and what watch it is and what's happening next and all that, but yet you haven't witnessed to somebody lately or showed them your life of living a Torah lifestyle, then I think you need to take a better look at really where your focus is on life. Because if your focus is not on making sure that somebody else is living a full life with God, I'd be taking a look at that, quite honestly.
Yeah, very interesting, Mark. That I thought that was really interesting where you talk about the fourth watch, and I was looking at that. I've got a little note that's pre-printed in my Bible, a little footnote on there, and it says between 3 and 6 a.m. is the fourth
Right.
watch.
That's I mentioned that you were talking about being woken up or something within that time. And actually it wasn't originally it wasn't that there was no fourth watch. Early Torah times there were only 3 watches, 3 night watches. And it was only in a Greek aspect that it switched into a fourth watch, and that was actually used in New Testament times.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's interesting. So that for me, it's always when I'm awakened, when the Father speaks to me, it's always between the third, between 3 and 6 in the morning. It's always in that time period. And then it's very interesting because in that same verse, in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them. It's that if there's a time to expect a word from the Lord, that is during that time that he comes. And if there's something that weighs on our hearts, something that's weighing on us that we need, because if we don't get past that, and it just continues to be a wall and a barrier to anything and everything else we do, what we talk about, what we say, how we worship, how we pray, it is all focused on whatever that matter is. But when that one, and I, like I said before, one word from God will change our lives. It changes everything. And so that was really interesting. But here's the other thing. That's when the miracles happen, because it says he was walking on the sea, and there brings back in the water aspect that Sandi was talking about.
Yeah.
That's where the miracles take place.
Yeah.
Is when his breakthrough comes, everything else changes. Everything does. And our whole faith level just goes from, bottom level, boom, all the way up to wherever, we can believe God for anything because he spoke into it.
I agree.
And he gives us that word. Don't be afraid. It's I. So
there literally are volumes written on the fourth watch, on 3 to 6 a.m. There are you can do a search for it, but there's books that have chapter after chapter on it. Another thing, and this is maybe a little counterintuitive to what I just taught on, but think of time and think of Torah, the prophets, the writings, and the time that we live today. If you want to talk about 4 different watches, where time up until not too far away in time was more of a physical time, and we're living more of in a spiritual time, which if you've been woken up by the Lord during that fourth watch and you're to pray, that's more of a spiritual time.
Right.
It's something I've thought about too. So
yeah, very interesting.
Very interesting.
Well, that brings us to the end of this show today.
No, it doesn't. I didn't hear from Sandi. This is my part of the show. So I want to hear from Sandi.
I'll just say something real quick because John has an appointment at 10. Mark, you're right. We need to pay attention to what is it's good to end time stuff is good. And I think it's important to learn that because it shows you the cyclical nature of everything that's happened. Right. But we also need to be aware of the moment, for he is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
There's my word.
That's right. Okay. You got it.
Well, cool. All right. Well, good deal. Well, Sandi, Mark, thank you for joining me today on this edition of Let Us Reason Together. All those who have been in the chat room, thank you for your comments that you've been putting in there. And those that are listening, give us a thumbs up. Whether you're listening right now, give us a thumbs up. Or if you're going to listen to it in the archives, give us a thumbs up. We'd like to just increase the algorithm there and share it on your social media. And there's Mark is fading. Mark is fading. So with that said, we'll be back next time, y'all willing. And until then, shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.